So for the next session, I wanted to introduce Elspeth James, who's the Finance Director at Penrith Building Society. Penrith are relatively new to CXA. We've only been working with them since really the end of the year, but we wanted to include this session as the way in which we work with them is slightly different to the traditional method by which we've deployed CXA in the past, and which you'll all be familiar with. The context, I suppose, here is that for the last couple of years now, it's felt like our standard CXA proposition, where we install an instance of the platform, we train up a team within the organisation in how to use it, and then we let you go ahead and build your own content, wasn't a model that was always appropriate for all types of organisation. We spoke to lots of places, particularly at the smaller to medium-sized end of the market, who really recognise the value of strong data management, good analytics, and saw the benefits that it could deliver to the organisation. But maybe they didn't have the internal IT infrastructure in place to support a local version of CXAir. Maybe they didn't have the resources with the skills required to administer the platform and build the outputs, or maybe they tried to do their own analytics in some shape or form in the past, but for whatever reason, they've perhaps been a bit underwhelmed by the results. So to try to better meet the needs of these types of organisations, we came up with a new proposition around deploying CXAir as a fully managed service, which we branded as Lucent 360. The marketing strapline that we came up with was give us access to your data, tell us what you want, and we'll do the rest. And what that meant in practice is that Connectica would build and maintain the technical environment to host CXAir. So we handle all the IT, make sure that the environment runs in an optimal way. We load the organisation's data into the platform, we join it and shape it into an index structure that best meets the access needs, fix any of the quality issues, generate any derived data items, and so on. Then based on what they tell us their requirements are, we'll work with them through a cyclical process, building dashboards and delivering them back out to them into live usage. We'll also provide full application support service through our help desk. So as an organisation, literally, you don't need to do anything apart from giving us your data and telling us what outputs you want. So we think the benefits of Lucent 360 really are that you can get guaranteed to get good quality analytics, because Kev's team who run this do it all day and every day. Obviously got decades worth of collective experience between them. It's quick to implement and produce results in what ends up being a kind of a production line process. Well, that's the intention anyway. It can also free up existing resources within the organisation where there's no dedicated analytics resource, and can sometimes be a cheaper way of doing it than trying to do it yourself. So for organisations that kind of fit that profile, we think it could give you a good way of achieving what they want to achieve with CXAir. So that's the thinking from Connectica anyway. That's why we put the Lucent 360 service together. But I'm going to pass over to Elspeth now to talk about the experience from the other side of the process as an organisation that's actually on the service, to hopefully show some of the content that's been produced over the last few months. Elspeth, over to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Alex, do you want to stop sharing and I'll see if I can share my screen?
Yeah.
Let's just see. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we certainly can.
Has it got a PowerPoint on it? Because I've got about 3 screens here. So I can't tell which one you can see, Kev. So
yeah, it is the PowerPoint.
Okay, that's fine. In which case, let me just try and do that. Yeah, is that sort of showing the actual slideshow? Fantastic. Okay, so I guess Alex has stolen a little bit of my thunder on the sort of first page as to why we went with Lucent 360. If I kind of go back a step as to when we met with Alex and the team originally, I think that was at the BSA conference back in 2019. And our chief exec at the time, and indeed our current chief exec, Tim Bowen, met with Alex, and that started an initial dialogue probably similar to dialogues that were happening with the likes of the Marsden and others at the time, just around how the organisations could work together. And I think, as Alex has alluded, the key issue, I guess, in many ways for us is a resourcing one. You'll all be aware we are obviously the smallest building society in the sector, very small and perfectly formed, but that does mean there are only a small number of resource available. And particularly from an IT perspective, where we outsource already a lot of our IT function under a managed service arrangement, we are provision users with MV rather than Sopra. So we outsource that and we're on a managed service with them. We also outsource other aspects of our IT. So our sort of technology in-house is fairly small and fairly limited. Coupled with that, from a finance perspective, again, we didn't necessarily have people with a sort of modelling and data analytics type background in-house. And we were sort of very aware, just in terms of taking Connexica and the CXAir platform, that we would have to potentially, purchase additional resource and actually bring in resource in-house to be able to lead and to create all the sort of information that the likes of Marsden, etc., are working through at the moment. And for us at the time, that wasn't a cost the business was prepared to sort of look at and wear. So we sort of said to Alex, keep us in the loop. We will come back to you. You can come back to us, etc., as time progresses. And then last summer, sort of midway through the pandemic, I think we got a call and sort of an approach from Alex and said, actually, we've got something new, and it's Lucent 360. It is effectively, as Alex has outlined, you tell us what you want, and actually we will use our own resource and data analytics team to build effectively the reports, the forms, the output, etc., that your business is needing to help it take its MI journey forward. As I've put on this first slide, we are a society that has been drowning in lots of data, and I think that's everybody's case. We have hundreds of spreadsheets. The spreadsheets are not necessarily always accurately maintained. We obviously have a huge depth of understanding about our membership base stored in our core, which is provision, but actually extracting that, other than through what we call fly speeds, which are equivalent to SQLs, it's quite time consuming, quite laborious, and doesn't really, we spend so much time extracting data and trying to create a report. We then, when we get the report, we actually do very little with it, because we spent all the time that we had available really just getting the information. And I think for us, that was stifling a lot of business decisions and how we were going to take the business forward. And really, we wanted to spend the time on actually what's the data telling us when we've extracted it into a meaningful format, rather than actually doing the extraction ourselves. And I think that the big thing for us, and the big reason we're really looking at this, although at the moment, as you'll see shortly, some of the projects we're doing are around efficiencies in our sort of reporting to various committees and our day-to-day awareness of what's going on in the business. The next step really for us is, what does that tell us about our membership base? As a membership organisation, we are really keen to understand that member demographic better, to understand who we have now, why do they come to the Penrith, what is the reason they want a relationship with us, and therefore how can we either make that relationship a really long-term relationship, or something that we can add further services and further insight to our members and really make them value the reason why they come to the Penrith. So that was a lot of the challenges we've been facing around data. And as I say, when Alex came to us and said, well, actually, we can basically, you tell us what you want and we'll go away and take your source data and put it into the format you want, and you end up with useful MI. So yeah, I think in summary, we've spent too much time preparing data, not enough looking at what it tells us. I think the reason that Lucent is right for us is just really, and I think Kevin sort of alluded to this previously, and obviously when you see what Kevin's been working on, is actually the team at Connexica are really aware of data and data analytics, and that's, I guess, what certain aspects of the team do on a day in, day out basis. They obviously provide support to the current CXAir platform users as to how to build your own models, etc. But they've obviously got that experience, and effectively what they're doing is building everything for us. And they're, in some ways, it's like and I don't like to use the word an outsourced IT department, but it is in other senses, in that it's a sort of series of people that have data analytics abilities, have done data modelling, have understood certainly how to use SQL. And although I have some limited experience, and I'm very lucky that in-house I have somebody else that uses SQL on a daily basis, so I can pull on his knowledge. It's not something that I really have time and the rest of my team have resource to do. And I think for us as well, and I guess that was why I asked the question of Andrew around who's using, the CXAir platform at Marsden and who is sort of leading that side of things. But for us, we haven't really seen Connexica and the CXAir platform as something that is IT-led and IT-driven. We're seeing this at the moment as something that's been led primarily by the finance team, who have been responsible historically for preparing the data and the MI for the business. But I think also trying to engage other areas of the business in actually looking at what they need in terms of solutions to their problems of understanding their members. I think the example that was given by Andrew just around the API, the agreement in principle phase, the next project we're about to start is looking at our commitments, as we call them, our new business book, and really making that work for our mortgage department in terms of what are they actually putting into that, and therefore what's it telling them about the position of our book in terms of position of applications, what's it telling them about how long it takes them to process an application, where that application is sourced from, the quality of the information that's coming in, what the type of demographic is that's coming for that product, and all of these sorts of things that the department wants to know about. We've now got a partner effectively with the Lucent 360 project that will be able to give us those answers. And I guess based on a fairly loose input at times, I think we've sort of, we don't have to be, I'm finding with Kevin and the team, completely prescriptive. I think what I love is the fact that they get and understand, and maybe that's because they've got experience of others in the sector, and what we're trying to achieve in terms of our output. And I think for us, that's been really important to actually see, we want to get X and Y out so that we can help make the decisions better, and they can give us suggestions and ideas as to how we can do that, and probably come at it from a slightly different angle if they were actually working in the business with us. So I think we find that incredibly beneficial and useful in terms of what we're seeing and some of the visual outputs so far. I think the other big reason why we went with the Lucent 360 is that they have the ability, again, that we don't have in-house, to connect all the different data sources. So while there have been a few teething troubles with our IT provider and actually getting the data opened up, I think we are broadly there with that now, which has been useful. But they're able to connect not just our provision side of things, they're able to connect our spreadsheets, they're able to connect our Sage trial balance that we use from a general ledger perspective. And I think the next step for us is they will actually be able to connect us to some of the external data sources. So for example, we sort of touched on HPI type connectivity. One of the big projects we're looking at doing over the course of the summer is our climate risk project, and how we link to sort of environmental agency type output, and how does that then look against what's out there in the market, against what's in our book, etc. We're going to be able to connect all of that together. And again, that's not something we have a skill set in-house to do, but we're completely aware that Kevin and his team have that ability and can support us on this. I think the other thing for us is that it's going to give us, and it is giving us, that real-time update in terms of our exec dashboard. So I will show you a couple of slides in a second just on the output to our exec dashboard. But one of the things that Tim and I, certainly as leaders of the business, wanted was a sort of daily snapshot of exactly the financial position of the business. How much new business is in, say, our mortgage pipeline, what's happening on our savers side of things, are we opening new accounts, are we closing accounts, what types of accounts are we opening and closing, what's our sort of funding position, where are we at really from a liquidity perspective. And I guess previously we would sort of go to 3 or 4 different data sources and sort of spend 15, 20 minutes on a morning making sure we knew the position, whereas now we can actually just log in and just look at a quick 5-minute report review and get all the answers we need for our sort of current financial position. We can then model that looking forward, we can look backwards with that. We've got various things that we're now able to build just from an initial dashboard within the business. So I think the real-time piece for us has been important. And I think, you know, the first slide that was shown this morning just around the number of partners that Connextica have now within the sector, I think is really important for us as well, because we are getting a partnership with Connextica who are people that understand the sector and understand the sort of data we're looking at and therefore what we want to get out of it. And I think that's really powerful for us, because you've got experience of our sector, you're able to sort of bring us the right tools and the right solutions. So Lucent's giving us all of that so far, and even 3 months in, we're getting a lot of that. So I guess what have we done? We've sort of said we started sort of December time, but I guess the project properly kicked off the beginning of January. It was we've set it up as an initial 12-month project, so we have a series of reports. I guess that's the way we're sort of the terminology we're using is each month we are coming to Alex and Kevin with a sort of request, if you like, for a report or series of reports on a particular area, and then they will go away and do some initial work to develop that report. They will come back with various touch points around concept, proof of concept, and then actually showing us what some initial output looks like, and then further down the line a sort of semi-final that we can sort of tweak, and then a final format that we can take out to the business. So I think, you know, it's working well. It doesn't feel particularly onerous on us as a business. We're able to sort of slot the meetings in and the time and workshop through everything we're needing. And at the moment, it has been very much, as I say, finance-led, because it was our project initially, and we wanted to sort of lead and understand the powerful, you know, how powerful I guess Connextica could be for us and CXAir as a platform. And once we've got that understanding, we're then able to share and roll out with the business. So far, we have created an exec dashboard, which I'll show you a couple of extracts from in a second. And then on top of that, we have created one of our key reporting packs, which is our retail credit risk, and really the output that goes to our sort of retail credit risk committee on a monthly basis in terms of how our mortgage book is performing, where we've got potentially weaknesses in that book, what are our areas of strength, etc., an area of focus. And I think the really powerful piece from that is, certainly as the person that chairs the Retail Credit Risk Committee, it was very much about we were getting the data and the pack presented, but there's very little commentary around it. Now the pack production is literally happening sort of 24, 48 hours after the month end. That's going to then just allow the next 2 or 3 working days for the business to actually really deep dive and understand, well, what's that data telling us? Have we got a concern from a credit risk perspective that we should be looking at into further detail? And actually, because of the way the pack is now set up, people can actually deep dive and look at the data source behind the pack that Kevin and his team have set up for us, and actually go in and say, well, why is it showing us this? Why, for example, in arrears, have we got, I don't know, 6 cases that are trending in the wrong direction? Who are those 6 cases? And have we taken appropriate steps and actions that we can report back to our credit risk committee on? So for us, it's very powerful in that the sort of time that was taken, and I would say time savings in finance particularly, will be 2 or 3 days at month end in terms of gathering all this data will just disappear, and it's starting to disappear overnight, because basically the data is sourced from the source systems, it's then put into various different models, and it's actually just extracted into the format we want, and there's little or no human intervention. The only aspect that we have to do now in finance is some sort of reconciliations to just understand that the numbers that it is presenting are the correct data, obviously, from the business, and you know, touch wood, that should be going fine. So that's a big step forward for the retail credit risk side of things. The other one that we're working on at the moment is the finance dashboard, and the dashboard that goes to the board. So again, at month end, we obviously put together a finance pack that goes to the board as part of our exec reporting. That pack is going to effectively be produced on an automatic basis 2 or 3 days after the month end. And again, it gives us time to actually understand what the numbers are saying a lot more, and how we can then look at, well, what does that mean for the business? Is there any areas of concern? And it just saves us a lot of time in terms of board reporting. Where we're going next, and I think that links to the information Kevin was presenting earlier, just around the forms, and then the agreement and principles stuff that we're showing at the Marsden. We are certainly, one of our huge problem areas has been our mortgage commitments, and the mortgage commitment spreadsheet, as my colleagues that are on the call would probably testify, is a real pain in the butt every single month end, and even through the month when we look at it. The department are not great at populating it correctly. They're not great at going back and updating it when things change, etc. And the next project that we're going to be working with the team on is actually creating almost more of a form structure that people will be able to sort of input the information to. We'll understand where there's gaps in that information. They'll be able to only populate it with the correct data effectively. And then from that, we're expecting some sort of dashboards that will come out to give us a real picture around how long things are taking to go through, for example, the commitment pipeline from an initial application being received until we release the funds, and then subsequent further advances and everything else. And it will link to our tranche management process. So that's going to be a really powerful step for the business. After that, the focus, and it's interesting to hear maybe when we do the workshop shortly, just on others' experience around products and how you're tracking things like product profitability, any comparators you're doing to the markets, and what sort of information you're using. That would be useful to help us on our project going forward. And then climate change, which I know is on the agenda of most societies on this call. Again, we're looking at the moment at what MI and analytics we would like to see and continue to report on in the business from a climate change perspective. And we will do all of that as part of the Lucent project to actually bring that to life. And definitely within that, there will be some external data feeds that are coming in. And I think anybody that's thinking about Lucent, I think the only challenge that we've really seen has definitely not been with anything to do with Connexica and the amazing team that are within Connexica supporting us. It has really actually been, unfortunately, with our relationship with Mutual Vision and Provision, and actually getting them to open up and to allow Connexica to basically interface. But that seems to have now been sorted, but that was a slight challenge. So if anybody is looking at going down this journey, do make sure you've engaged with the IT areas early to ensure that they're on board in this. And then finally, just before I stop and sort of hand over to questions, I just wanted to sort of show a couple of slides just in terms of what we're seeing. Obviously, this is just a cut from the data. It's not necessarily our live data feed as it stands. So, this gives us a position in terms of our liquidity within the business. So at this particular point in time, we still like to track against SDL percentages. We still use those for reporting. And that gives us a real snapshot of where we are against different aspects of our business on a day-to-day basis. And then the other one that I've just dropped in again as an example is just our piece around our savings accounts, and one of the sort of exec dashboard extracts just around what savings accounts we've had open year to date, what we've closed, where they've been open and closed, etc. And then within that, we have obviously drill down functionality that the business can use to just understand the various different positions and who the accounts are, what the accounts were that were open and closed, and whether we lost a customer relationship as a result. So I think probably that's all I wanted to say just in terms of the journey. Other than, yes, it's probably a similar journey to others around what we're trying to achieve and where we're going. But I think for us, some of the pain around that sort of whole technology piece, and certainly the being able to mine into the data and extract the data the way we want, has been taken away from this, and that's been really important for us at the Penrith. So yeah.
Fantastic, thanks Elspeth. That's really great. Any questions on that from anyone? Do you see any hands raised? Tom, was your hand still up from last time, or you got
no, that's a new hand. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Elspeth. That was really interesting. I think the only question that occurs to me is how do you manage that process of defining requirements? Essentially, I mean, have you got some sort of formal documentation that you put together and then provide to to Connectica, or do you manage that in a much more informal way? Is that just sort of a regular meetings and actually getting things documented at that point?
We have a project outline form, I guess is the best way to sort of describe it, so that we are filling in requirements. And I think, we'll probably be evolving that as this year goes on. But basically, yeah, Kevin and Alex have come up with a structure around what we want to prescribe. We define whether we want it as something that's a daily life feed, whether we want it to give us monthly reporting, whether we want it to look historically. We then, talk about the different data sources that it comes from, whether it's just something from ProV with Sage or Excel, etc. So we fill all of that definition out. We try and give them examples where we can of what we've got at the moment. And certainly for a lot of the stuff which is Excel and maybe extracts from ProV Core, we've been giving them the sort of SQL codes that we would use to sort of attach. So there's a sort of series of attachments, I guess, that goes across, and we're at the moment trying to make it fairly simple now. It seems to work. I mean, it might be Kevin might have a view whether it gives him and his team everything they want, but it is. We definitely have a prescribed form that we try to send ahead of the initial discussion we have, and then we do a sort of longer workshop to chat through the various specifics and to get that initial understanding of the detail.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.